Welcome back, everyone. This will be my new Miss Marvel trailer video that they just dropped. It mostly focuses on her new powers from what seem like the Negabands and how they're going to be different from the comics and her Inhumans backstory. I'll explain that and what's actually going on with the Inhumans. It also focuses a little bit more on what's going on with the villain group, so I'll talk about them too, and how this is going to tie in with the Marvel Phase 4 movies and the Young Avengers, because even though she wasn't part of the Young Avengers in the comics initially, they're kind of positioning her that way in the MCU. She was part of a different team called the Champions. They were like a separate group of people who were kind of like the Young Avengers. But if you're brand new to the channel, I will do full episode videos for the series when it releases. It is going to overlap a little bit with the Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi episodes. So later in May, early June, we'll be seeing a whole lot of Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Darth Vader rematch while they get started with the Miss Marvel episodes. Marvel and Star Wars fans will be eating pretty good this summer. But just to talk about her powers a little bit, because they do look a little bit different and her backstory is different from the comics. Because originally in the comics she was an Inhuman, her powers were biological, but they're using the Negabands, and that's why her powers look a little bit more like Green Lanterns with the plasma energy constructs. They tried to make the expression of her powers look a little bit similar to the expression of her comic book powers. She uses a couple of those wrestling moves like she uses in the comics when she embiggens herself. They call it embiggening in the comics. It's just like a funny term that they came up with. Even though I think because of The Simpsons, embiggen became an actual term in the dictionary. That wasn't because of Miss Marvel, that was because of embiggen on the Simpsons series, so you can thank them for that.
A noble spirit embiggens the smallest man.
Biggins? Never heard that word before I moved to Springfield.
I don't know why. It's a perfectly cromulent word.
In the comics, she started out as this normal girl just going to school living in Jersey City. That's on the other side of Manhattan from where, say, like Spider-Man is over in Queens. She was a huge fan of the Avengers. She was a huge fan of Captain Marvel. That's why you see all over her bedroom, like if you zoom in and enhance on all the clippings that she has pasted up, all the posters, they're all of Captain Marvel and some of the Avengers. Most of these depictions of Captain Marvel are things from the Captain Marvel movie or from the original Captain Marvel comics that were based on her becoming Captain Marvel for the first time. The funny thing about the Negabands on the TV show is that they're actually meant to be a big callback to the OG version of Captain Marvel, the very first version, who was a man called Mar-Vell, who did appear during the Captain Marvel movie in the MCU, but he was played by Annette Bening, so they changed the character just a little bit. If you remember Annette Bening's character, the whole MCU backstory for the character is that it was a Kree officer who was sent to Earth to research the Tesseract and create this faster-than-light drive using Infinity Stone energy. The way most people in the MCU right now travel around the universe, because the universe is vast, it takes a long time to get around, is they use those special jump gates.
Oh, man. Anyway, before I was so rudely interrupted, at that time, I was a Federal Express man.
So there really aren't any faster-than-light ships for normal people in the MCU right now. That was the whole MacGuffin during the Captain Marvel movies, that they were trying to find a drive that would allow them to travel between different galaxies instantaneously across the universe. The only way right now to get across the universe faster than using those jump gates, which take a little bit of time, they're a little bit faster, but they still are slower than faster than light, is if characters like Thanos, for instance, or other characters like Loki have the Space Stone, the Tesseract, and they can open portals instantly traveling between two different points in the universe. Or if characters like Thor can open wormholes using things like the Bifrost, which are even faster than the jump gates, but it's not an instantaneous kind of thing. Like you can actually see the effect of the Bifrost wormhole opening across space as it transports the Hulk at the beginning of Infinity War. The only other characters that we've seen recently that travel faster than that are characters like the Celestials who can teleport themselves. That is meant to be instantaneous, so that's almost like faster than light, but it's a slightly different type of technology. But the Negabands themselves, like these bands that you see her pull out of here, that's what we think that they are at least. They're relics from the Kree Empire that transform mental energy into physical energy. They might change the way they work a little bit during the MCU. But it's part of the reason why she can create these different mental constructs based on what she thinks of. Like she thinks of these two giant fists forming together, so the Negabands help her do that using energy, instead of using her embiggen powers like the comics. The reason why Marvel said that they did her powers this way a little bit differently is just to make them seem more cosmic, like the origin of Captain Marvel's powers in the MCU, the origin of Monica Rambeau's powers in the MCU. Even though her powers seem a little bit different, Monica Rambeau's expression of powers will look a little bit similar to Captain Marvel's, even though the way she was mutated is going to be a little bit different with the Hex. I've already done a much bigger video about Monica Rambeau's powers and how she's crazy powerful just depending on who's writing her. The way her powers work are kind of nebulous, so she can either be super powerful or just kind of powerful just depending on who's writing the character. Her whole thing is that as long as she can understand how a type of power works, she can replicate it. So for instance, one of the most complex types of powers in the MCU would be the Infinity Stone energy. If her human brain could figure out a way to understand exactly how Infinity Stone energy works, she could replicate Infinity Stone energy. That's how powerful she is. Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel powers are a little bit different in that she's more like a cosmic battery, like she can absorb and redirect energy, but there is a limit to that. That's why during the What If series, you see the Infinity Stone version of Ultron, Infinity Ultron, whatever you want to call him, able to overpower Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. There is like a maximum amount of energy that she could theoretically absorb. Because Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel character is going to cross over with the Marvels movie, Captain Marvel 2, what they might do is in the MCU movies, introduce other Kree characters that have ties to the original Captain Marvel. There were a billion different versions in the comics. Some of them were biologically related to the original Mar-Vell character, Annette Bening's character in the MCU. They wind up fighting with the newer versions of Captain Marvel at some point, so they might have a version of that going on in the background of the Captain Marvel 2 movie. Because mutants and X-Men characters are going to be so big during Marvel Phase 4 and Marvel Phase 5, a lot of you are asking what's going to happen to the Inhumans now, because they're kind of like this separate weird group with different types of biological powers. My understanding right now is that Kevin Feige will eventually address them, and it'll probably be a multiverse explainer, like you'll see versions of Inhuman characters from the comics show up from the multiverse, maybe even from that Inhumans TV show. But right now, I'm not expecting them to be like a really huge focus for them in Marvel Phase 4 and Marvel Phase 5. So if they do like a larger Inhumans project or they redo the TV series with new versions of the character, that probably won't happen for a long time. One of Kevin Feige's big things that he's said in the past is that when it comes to including other stuff in the canon, like other weird groups, it's a situation where anything can become canon at any time, just depending on what kind of character they need and what kind of situation it is. That's why Doctor Strange 2 is such a big deal, because it presents all these opportunities for brief versions of multiverse variants of all these X-Men characters, even Fox's Fantastic Four characters to show up briefly. Really good example of that is Patrick Stewart's Professor X showing up as a variant of the one that we saw during the Fox X-Men movies. Like, he won't be the original version from those Fox X-Men movies, but he'll be similar to that version, along with a lot of the other variants that we'll see on that Multiverse Illuminati team. And the theory being the reason why they're variants instead of being the actual original versions is because one of the Scarlet Witches, either the variant or the MCU Scarlet Witch, will wind up destroying that entire Illuminati base, meaning that most of those variants that we see, like the really cool versions, will live very short lives during the movie. But because they're variants, you're not killing the original versions of the characters. You could always bring those characters back, played by the same actors, just as different versions of the characters. Right now, the rumors on the Miss Marvel series is they're going to have two different villain groups, and one is going to be a little more homegrown, and one will be a little more supernatural. I believe the two different villain groups are supposed to be, one, this group of Black Ops armored soldiers that you see. They're supposed to be part of a group called NICE, N-I-C-E, which is sort of like the MCU version of ICE, but for superheroes, supervillains. They're basically responsible for dealing with illegal immigrants in real life. So like the MCU has a version of that, but it's focused more on people with superpowers. Talk about Moon Knight and Falcon and Winter Soldier connections. I'm doing Moon Knight episodes right now. They have a GRC ad in the background of Moon Knight. The GRC is this group that we learned about during Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is responsible for trying to put everybody back where they came from after they get blipped back with the Hulk's Infinity Gauntlet snap. The group that it seems like Red Dagger is supposed to belong to, I believe, is called Clandestine, even though I don't think that they were a villain group in the comics. I think they're just changing them a little bit for the MCU, if that's what their name is going to be. But because it seems like she's getting her powers from the Negabands, it sounds like that's going to be a big MacGuffin, and people will try to steal those from her. Maybe this villain group here. Either way, I think it's a pretty easy assumption to make that there's going to be some kind of post-credit scene either with Nick Fury connecting to Secret Invasion and what's happening with the Skrulls during that and the Kree, and some sort of post-credit scene like Monica Rambeau got on WandaVision, teasing the events of Captain Marvel 2 and the Marvels, because the artifacts that she's using to gain her powers are probably a Kree or a Skrull artifact. Even though I haven't done a lot of Young Avengers videos recently too, I think the idea is that eventually they'll do a Young Avengers project of some kind, whatever they wind up calling it, and she would be part of that team, because there are several different Young Avengers members or characters who could be Young Avengers who have been showing up or will show up in the next year or two. But if you have any other questions about what's going on with the way they changed her character, or what's going on with the Inhumans, or other Miss Marvel questions, just post them in the comments below. We won't get the episodes till early June, so it's going to be a little while. My full Moon Knight Episode 2 video will post Wednesday, just like normal. Everyone click here for my full Moon Knight Episode 2 trailer video, and click here for my full Moon Knight Episode 1 video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.